As Minnesota continues to reckon with the explosive fallout from their massive billion-dollar fraud scandal, a number of lawmakers they're putting the blame squarely on the shoulders of Governor Tim Walz. And to make things worse, we've now discovered that he's continuing to mislead voters about what he's doing to repair the damage. Well, this mess just keeps getting worse by the hour, and it's kind of difficult to keep up. The governor's critics are now saying that by failing to uphold his oath of office and protect taxpayer money, Walz is the real culprit behind those wretched scams, which allegedly skimmed more than $1 billion, all from the state's coffers, making his state of Minnesota our nation's largest COVID-19 fraud case. Well, like they say, go big or go home. Now, Walz, he's hemming and hawing and dodging questions about the steps which his administration is currently taking to uncover fraud in his state's Medicaid program. The governor says repeatedly that Minnesota's Department of Health Services, or DHS, has hired an independent auditor to investigate more than a dozen Medicaid-related programs. However, he's been leaving out one very important detail. That auditor only has the authority to review an extremely small number of claims. According to reports, the investigation has no power at all to look into Medicaid payments, which run through a bunch of nonprofit managed care organizations, and those expenses make up the vast majority of the spending. Not surprisingly, a number of furious state lawmakers are now in an uproar over the matter. They say they feel completely misled by the governor's convoluted message regarding the audit, and that most of the fraud likely beyond the scope of that investigation. For their part, the governor's team says that Walz doesn't talk about the limits of the audit because he thinks it'll be too complicated for people to understand. They also say they've limited their probe due to deals they've cut with all those managed care companies who are each responsible for their own internal audits. What good does that do? A number of people, they've already been charged with stealing millions of dollars from the state by billing Medicaid for related housing services they never provided, and authorities believe that's just the tip of the iceberg. And meanwhile, the Trump administration's Medicaid chief, that guy, Dr. Oz, he has put Walz on notice and given him 60 days, just a couple of months, to clean up that massive mess. He's threatening to cut off federal funding entirely, saying that the two-time governor was asleep at the wheel while scammers used taxpayer money to buy luxury cars, also snazzy homes, and potentially finance al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. This is getting deeper by the minute. Final thoughts. This is the News Roundup Lowdown. And newsflash, one of the best ways to eliminate Medicaid fraud in Minnesota and in every state, but mostly Minnesota, is to have in place a system of checks and balances, full transparency as well, and a little-known thing called accountability. To make things worse, the system in Governor Timbo's state is so mired in fraud that outside auditors, they've been called in, and their mission is to uncover something which the rest of us, we already know about. Fraud to the tune of $1 billion in this place. Pranav, if you would please, another graphic of Walsneyland. Yes, I love theme parks, and that one's a doozy. That's where admission is free, but you pay to get out. Look, if I'm a Minnesota taxpayer, I'd bail out of that state quicker than Kamala Harris ditched Joe Biden when she ran for president. Remember that time, Davey?
Oh, yeah, Bill. We all remember.
Yeah, just a couple of months back. Tim Walz is, for now, the governor of Minnesota, and on his watch, there's been an epic level of fraud. Taxpayers, they're on the hook. People who should have received health care and more, they were left in the lurch. Far too many nefarious characters. They got rich. And to make things worse, guess who's going to foot the bill for all this ineffective auditing? John Q., state and federal taxpayer. That's folks just like you and I. Also, think on this. In the state of Minnesota, if it was a company that Walz actually owned, I guarantee he would have run his business far better than he's running his state. And if this gets to your belly like it does to me, leave us a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. And a lot of folks have been writing in. Now, Producer Davey, I know the governor wants us to go away and leave him alone, but look, people have gotten ripped off. We want a full accounting of what happened and why, and the Timmer needs to tell the whole country what went wrong on his watch. And what are you thinking right now?
Well, the question is, how is anyone supposed to get to the bottom of this if they can't even look at the books? I mean, the whole thing sounds a bit dodgy to me.
Yeah, from day one, it's a mess. And some in Camp Walz, they will argue that the governor is not corrupt. But at the very least, come on, he's incompetent. He's in over his head. And we should all thank our lucky stars that I Know Nothing Walz never became the vice president of the USA. What a tragedy that could have become.